The self-made billionaire ate alone on his birthday, until one nanny and her 3 children walked in and changed his life forever. He had $4.7 billion in the bank, 3 private jets, a 40-room mansion, an entire floor of a Manhattan skyscraper with his name engraved above the entrance in letters 3 feet tall. And on the night of his 67th birthday, the man who had built all of it sat completely, utterly alone at a dining table designed for 20 people. No calls, no guests, no cake. Just the sound of a grandfather clock ticking slowly on a wall that had never once been touched by the hands of someone who truly loved him. His staff had been given the night off. His business partners were scattered across different continents. His family, well, that is a story we will get to. But here is what nobody expected that night. At exactly 7:43 p.m., a key turned in the side door of that mansion, and in walked a woman, not a billionaire, not a celebrity, not anyone the world would ever stop to recognize on the street. Just a nanny, a woman who earned $18 an hour caring for other people's children. Behind her walked 3 kids. In their hands, a handmade birthday card decorated in crayon and glitter, and a small grocery store birthday cake with plastic candles that probably cost $6. And what happened next, what that woman said to him, what those children did in the hours that followed, would force this self-made billionaire to ask himself one question he had never once dared to ask in 67 years of building his empire. Was any of it worth it? Welcome to True Spark Stories. While you're here, please hit the subscribe button right now so you never miss a story like this one. And drop a comment below telling us where in the world you are watching from. Now, stay with me, because this story will change the way you see wealth, success, and what it truly means to be rich. His name was Daniel Whitmore. And if you had asked anyone in the business world to describe him, they would have used words like visionary, relentless, unstoppable, a man who turned nothing into everything through the sheer burning force of his own will. But nobody would have used the word happy. Daniel was born in a 1-room apartment in a part of the city that people with money never visit. His mother, Gloria, worked as a seamstress during the day and cleaned office buildings at night. She raised him alone, no father in the picture, no extended family nearby. Just a small woman with worn hands and an enormous heart who looked at her son every single morning and said the same thing. Daniel, if you work harder than the world expects, life will open doors other people never even see. He believed her. He never stopped believing her. At 19, he took a job on a construction crew hauling bricks in the cold for $11 an hour. At 23, he was managing small renovation projects on weekends while working his regular job during the week. At 27, he borrowed $40,000, every cent he could scrape together, and launched his first construction company out of a rented office the size of a large closet. He slept 4 hours a night. He skipped vacations. He worked through illnesses and holidays and every occasion that normal people stop for. Within 10 years, Whitmore Construction had projects in 6 states. Within 20, the Whitmore Group was building hospitals and university libraries and waterfront developments that reshaped entire skylines. Within 30 years, Daniel Whitmore became one of the most powerful real estate developers in the history of this country. But success has a shadow, and Daniel's shadow was enormous. The long hours meant missed dinners. The missed dinners became missed birthdays. The missed birthdays became a quiet, creeping distance between himself and the people who had once loved him most. His wife, Catherine, stayed for 18 years. She was patient in a way that most people are not capable of being. But patience, no matter how deep, has a bottom. One evening, she sat across from him at this very same dining table, the one built for 20, and she said very quietly, "Daniel, I don't think you even notice when I'm in the room anymore." He had looked up from his phone and said, "Of course I do." But they both knew that wasn't true. Catherine left 2 years later. Their daughter Elena was 21 at the time. She tried to maintain the relationship with her father for another few years, sending messages, visiting on occasional holidays. But Daniel was always distracted, always half present, always somewhere else in his mind even when his body was in the room. Eventually, Elena stopped reaching out, and Daniel told himself that was fine, that people drifted, that life was complicated, that he had built something extraordinary and that had to count for something. He told himself that every night as he sat in a house with 40 rooms and ate dinner alone. Now, on the other side of the city, a woman named Maria Alvarez was having a very different kind of evening. Maria had been working as a professional nanny for 11 years. She was the kind of woman who remembered children's allergies, who kept emergency snacks in her bag, who noticed when a child was quieter than usual and would sit with them until they talked. Families trusted her completely. She was not just good at her job, she was one of those rare people who do their work as though it is a calling. But life had not been gentle with Maria either. 8 months before that rainy night, her younger sister Rosa passed away suddenly from a heart condition nobody had known was there. Rosa had been 34 years old. She left behind 3 children, 7-year-old twins named Miguel and Sofia, and a 10-year-old named Camila, the oldest, who had held her siblings' hands at the funeral with a steadiness that broke every adult in the room. Maria had no children of her own, but she never hesitated. She took the children in immediately. She moved them into her apartment. She rearranged her schedule. She took a second job on weekends cleaning vacation rentals. She made it work. Barely some months, but she made it work because Rosa's children were not going anywhere. Then, without warning, the family she had worked for as a nanny for 4 years announced they were relocating to London. They were very sorry. They gave her 2 weeks' notice and a small bonus check. And just like that, Maria Alvarez was out of work, with 3 children depending on her, and no clear path forward. She searched job listings every morning before the children woke up. She sent applications every night after they went to sleep. And when she found what appeared to be a promising posting for emergency nanny work at a private residence, she gathered the children, took 3 buses across the city in the pouring rain, and arrived at an address that turned out to be a 40-room mansion in the most exclusive neighborhood she had ever set foot in. She almost turned back, but Camila looked up at her in the rain and said, "Aunt Maria, we're already here." So Maria Alvarez walked up to the front door of Daniel Whitmore's mansion and rang the bell. Daniel heard the doorbell and frowned. He was not expecting anyone. He had made sure of that. The whole point of giving the staff the night off was so that no one would be here. No well-meaning housekeeper offering to bring him tea. No security guard making polite small talk. No reminders that the house was big and the night was long and he was spending his 67th birthday the same way he had spent the last 11, completely alone. He almost didn't answer. He sat at the table for a full 30 seconds after the bell rang, telling himself it was probably a delivery, something that could wait until morning. Then it rang again. He pushed back his chair slowly, walked through the corridor, past the portraits, past the awards mounted in gold frames, past the photographs of buildings he had constructed on 4 continents, and opened the front door. The woman standing there was soaked. Her jacket was dark with rain. Her hair was pressed flat against her forehead. She had a large bag over one shoulder and 3 children standing in a tight cluster behind her, all of them shivering. For a moment, neither of them said anything. Then Maria straightened her shoulders, the way someone does when they are embarrassed but determined, and said, "I'm so sorry to bother you, sir. My name is Maria Alvarez. I found a listing for emergency childcare support at this address. I know it's late. I know it's raining. But I have 3 children with me, and I wanted to come in person because I am a hard worker and I don't give up, and I—" She stopped, because something in Daniel's expression told her this was wrong. "I never posted a listing," Daniel said. Maria closed her eyes briefly. Someone had put up a false address, a scam listing. She had dragged 3 children across the city in a storm for nothing. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "I'm so sorry to have disturbed you. Come on, kids." She turned to go, and then the youngest, Miguel, 7 years old, soaking wet and shivering, looked up at Daniel with enormous dark eyes and said very softly, "Mister, do you have anything to eat? We didn't have dinner yet." Daniel Whitmore had negotiated with some of the most powerful people on earth. He had closed deals worth hundreds of millions of dollars. He had stood in rooms where the pressure was so intense that other men had walked out. But something about those 7 words, spoken by a cold, hungry child standing in the rain on his birthday, did something to him that no boardroom had ever managed. It cracked something open. "Come in," he said. "All of you. Come in out of the rain." Maria hesitated. "Sir, we really don't need to. There is more food in there than I can eat in a week," Daniel said. "Please." It was the please that surprised even him. He could not remember the last time he had said it and meant it like that. They came inside. The children stopped moving the moment they entered the foyer. They looked up at the ceilings. They looked at the chandelier. They looked at the grand staircase curving upward into the upper floors of the house. Sophia reached out and touched the wall gently, as though she needed to confirm it was real. "Is this a hotel?" Miguel whispered. "No," Camila said firmly, pulling his hand back. Don't touch things. Daniel almost smiled. He led them to the dining room. The table set for 20 with crystal glasses and golden candles, and a 3-tier birthday cake that had been delivered by the private baker he hired once a year for a celebration that never actually happened, and he watched the children's faces as they took it all in. Maria put her hand over her mouth. "Sir," she said, "is today my birthday?" Daniel confirmed. "Yes." There was a short silence. Then Miguel turned to look at the cake, then at Daniel, then back at the cake. "You were going to eat all of that by yourself?" "Miguel," Camila said sharply. "I was going to try," Daniel said, and this time he did smile, quietly, almost to himself, like a muscle that hadn't been used in a long time and wasn't entirely sure it still worked. He told them to sit. He went to the kitchen and came back with plates and warm bread and sliced roast chicken that had been prepared by his chef that afternoon and left in the refrigerator untouched. He poured juice for the children and set out everything he had without ceremony, the way his mother used to clear the counter and put down whatever was available and say, "Eat, just eat, we'll figure the rest out later." The children ate with the focused, grateful intensity of people who were genuinely hungry. Maria barely touched her plate. She sat with her back straight and kept glancing at Daniel as though trying to figure out what kind of man he was, what the cost of this kindness would turn out to be. Because in her experience, kindness from powerful people always came with a cost attached somewhere. But Daniel wasn't watching her with the calculating look she had learned to recognize. He was watching the children. He was watching Miguel tear a piece of bread in half and hand the bigger piece to Sofia without being asked. He was watching Camila sit up properly and fold her napkin in her lap even in a stranger's house, trying to be dignified for reasons that had nothing to do with impressing anyone and everything to do with who she had decided to be. He was watching 3 children who had lost everything, their mother, their home, their stability, sit at a table and still find ways to be kind to each other. And something in his chest that had been locked for a very long time, not broken, just locked, turned. After the plates were cleared, Miguel leaned forward on his elbows and said, "Mr. Daniel, can we sing to you?" "You don't have to," Daniel started. "We want to," Sofia said. Maria looked at him with an expression that was part apology and part something warmer. She gave a small nod as though to say, "Let them. Just let them." So Daniel Whitmore, billionaire, empire builder, a man whose name appeared on the sides of buildings across 4 continents, sat quietly at the head of his enormous empty table. And 3 children who had lost nearly everything sang him happy birthday in a house that had forgotten what singing sounded like. His jaw tightened. His eyes became very still. He did not cry. He was not built for that, or so he had always believed. But for the first time in longer than he could remember, Daniel Whitmore could not speak. If you are still watching up to this point, type, "I'm still here" in the comments section right now, and tell us what you think Daniel is going to do next. Because what happens in the next few hours inside that house, nobody saw coming. Not Maria, not the children, and not Daniel himself. That night, after the children had eaten and the candles had burned low, Maria sat across from Daniel at the far end of that long table and told him everything. She did not intend to. She had planned to thank him politely, gather the children, and figure out the rest on the street if she had to. She was not someone who burdens strangers with her problems. She had spent her whole life making sure her problems stayed her own. But Daniel asked one question, just one. "How long have you been managing on your own?" And something about the way he asked it, without pity, without performance, the way someone asks when they actually want to know the answer, broke through every wall she had built. She told him about Rosa, about the phone call that came on an ordinary Tuesday morning, about the funeral where Camila had held her siblings' hands and not made a single sound because she was 10 years old and already understood that someone had to stay strong, about the apartment that was now too small and the second job on weekends and the job listings and the false address that had brought her here through the rain tonight. Daniel listened. He did not interrupt. He did not offer solutions before she was finished. He did not look at his phone once. He just listened. And when she was done, the room was quiet for a long moment. Then Daniel said, "You came all the way across the city in a storm with 3 children on the possibility of a job that turned out not to exist." "Yes," Maria said a little defensively. "That's not desperation," Daniel said. "That's commitment." Maria looked at him. "I know the difference," he said quietly. "I built everything I have on that exact quality." She didn't know what to say to that, so she said nothing. The children had fallen asleep on the large sofa in the adjoining room, Miguel curled against Sofia, Camila upright with her head tilted back, her hand still loosely holding her brother's sleeve even in sleep. Maria had covered them with a throw blanket she'd found folded on the armrest. Daniel had watched her do it without saying anything. Now he stood at the doorway of that room for a long moment, looking at the three of them. There was an expression on his face that Maria could not fully read. Not quite sadness, not quite longing, something older than both. The next morning Maria woke early and got the children moving before the house fully stirred. She was folding the blanket when Daniel appeared in the doorway in a plain dark sweater, holding 2 cups of coffee. He held one out to her. She took it. "Thank you," she said, "for everything. We'll get out of your way." "Stay," Daniel said. Maria paused. "The house has 38 rooms that nobody uses," he said. "You need stable housing and work. I need—" he paused, choosing the word carefully. "I need this house to function like someone actually lives in it." "Sir, my name is Daniel," he said, "and I'm not offering charity. I'm offering a position. Full salary, proper contract, your own wing of the house for you and the children, weekends flexible. In exchange, you manage the household and the children have a stable place to grow." Maria stared at him for a long time. "Why?" she finally said. Daniel looked at her steadily. "Because last night was the first time in 11 years that this house felt like something other than a storage facility for expensive furniture." She searched his face for the catch, for the angle, for the thing underneath the offer that would eventually cost her something she couldn't afford to give. She didn't find it. "1-month trial," she said. "If anything feels wrong, we leave. No argument." "Agreed," Daniel said, and that was how it began. The weeks that followed were unlike anything Daniel's house had ever held. Miguel discovered the library and began pulling books off shelves at random, asking Daniel what words meant with the relentless curiosity of a child who has just realized that knowledge is infinite and he wants all of it. Sofia found the grand piano in the music room, untouched for years, and began pressing keys one at a time with enormous concentration. Camila asked Daniel one afternoon if she could see the blueprints for one of his buildings because she had decided she wanted to be an architect, and the way she said it, not as a dream but as a plan, made Daniel laugh out loud for the first time in longer than he could account for. He started cooking breakfast on Sundays, not because anyone asked him to. He had simply woken up one morning, gone to the kitchen, and started making pancakes, and the sound of 3 children running down the stairs when they smelled the batter had done something to his entire internal structure that no amount of business success had ever come close to replicating. He attended Miguel's soccer game on a Saturday in October and stood on the sideline in a coat that cost more than most people's monthly rent, cheering for a 7-year-old who couldn't stop grinning every time he looked over and saw Daniel there. He helped Camila with a school project about urban planning and spent 3 hours at the kitchen table explaining load-bearing structures and zoning laws to a 10-year-old who asked better questions than half the architects he had hired over the years. And slowly, without design or announcement, something that had been absent from Daniel Whitmore's life for over a decade began to return. Purpose. Not the cold-driven, relentless purpose of empire building. Something warmer, something that asked nothing of him except that he show up. Then one afternoon in November, the front door opened. Daniel was in the kitchen. He heard footsteps stop in the hallway, then a long silence. He walked out to find a woman standing in the entrance. Late 30s, dark hair, his own eyes looking back at him from a face that had grown up while he wasn't paying attention. Elena, his daughter. She had heard through someone, a former housekeeper, a mutual contact he never found out exactly, that there were children living in the house. She had come, she would admit later, expecting to find something troubling, some lapse in judgment from an aging, lonely man. Instead, she stood in the hallway of her childhood home and heard from the direction of the music room, Sofia playing a halting, beautiful scale on the piano, and from the library, Miguel's voice calling out, "Daniel, what does perseverance mean?" And Daniel calling back, "Come find me and I'll show you how to look it up yourself." Elena did not move for almost a full minute. When Daniel came around the corner and saw her, he stopped. They looked at each other across a distance that was not really about feet or hallways. "Hi, Dad," she said finally. Her voice was careful, feeling for solid ground. "Elena," he said. And then, because 67 years of building walls does not disappear overnight but can, in the right moment, develop a door, he said, "Are you hungry? I was about to make lunch." She blinked. "You cook now?" "Apparently," he said. She laughed, surprised by it, and he smiled, fully unguarded, in a way she had not seen since she was very small. She stayed for lunch, then for dinner, then she started coming back. Years later, when a journalist writing a profile on Daniel Whitmore asked him to name the greatest investment he had ever made, expecting an answer about markets, timing, vision, Daniel leaned back in his chair and was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "A woman rang my doorbell in the rain on my birthday. She had 3 children and a handmade card and a $6 cake, and I stepped aside and let them in." The journalist waited for more. "That's it," Daniel said. "That was the investment. Everything else was just money." Because here is what that night taught Daniel Whitmore, a man who had spent 40 years believing that greatness was built in boardrooms and measured in billions. Family is not always the people who share your blood. Sometimes it is the people who show up at your door in the worst moment of their lives, and somehow, without knowing it, rescue you from the worst moment of yours. And sometimes the door you've been waiting for someone to knock on has been yours all along. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Subscribe to True Spark Stories for more powerful stories about life, love, loss, and the moments that change everything. Leave a comment below telling us, what would you have done if you had opened that door? Would you have let them in? Because the next story we have for you is even more unbelievable than this one.